throw, swing.
There it is! There it is! Get out! Get out! All right!
Hit number 4192.
Swing on and miss. And Tom Browning has pitched a perfect game.
And a high fly ball, center field. He hit it a ton. It's gone. And the 2010 Central Division Championship belongs to the Cincinnati Reds. And Homer Bailey has pitched a no-hitter.
You're listening to the Redlegs Radio Report with Jason and Todd on Bowling Green's home of the Reds, ESPN Radio.
Jason Harbison with you here on the Redlegs Radio Report, ESPN 102.7 FM and 1450 AM out of Bowling Green, Kentucky. And you can hear us throughout Red season, of course, 9 to 10 a.m. Central. Now, our guest today is so much of a show regular, we may have to name part of our studio after him. And he's always warned me about doing too long of an intro because he doesn't like that when we do that. So please welcome back to the show, broadcaster Chris Welsh. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Jason, thanks for having me on. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Hope you're doing great, your family doing great. And hey, what a crazy year we're wrapping up here, huh?
It really is. I mean, and that really kind of leads me to my first question. It's almost like I prepped you before we went on air here. But what do you make of 2020, the season as a whole, maybe even just this off season and how crazy it is? You see teams, maybe even the Reds, there's been rumors that they're kind of trying to make a salary dump due to the loss of revenue with there being no fans in the stands and just all the things that go along with COVID. I guess I just kind of want your take on all things 2020.
Well, you know, first of all, what a crazy year. I mean, the baseball was just one small little sliver of life out there somewhere compared to everybody else that's been impacted. I knew so many friends that just weren't working. I wasn't working, was not being paid the entire time that there was no baseball. So it's a tough for everybody. And I think that baseball was kind of a show that, hey, you know what, if you really try and if you apply the rules and go by the protocol, you can play a lot of games. You can get 25, 40 people together, maybe 50 people in a traveling party, and you can figure out a way to stay healthy. Have some kind of accountability to your ball club and your teammates. And if you're able to do that, and I think Major League Baseball showed everybody that you can do that. So if they can play a season, even only 60 games as it was last year, they did play a full postseason, and that's, of course, important to the owners. But it's also something that you've got to grab on and say, all right, if we could do that last year, we can go to a full season this year.
Do you think that's something, I guess, moving forward that I've been hearing a lot of fans, a lot of people that listen to our show are saying how much they loved some of maybe the rule changes, especially the way that the playoffs were. We'll get into the Rules Academy a little bit later because I know you're big on the rules. But I guess just the take that you have on how the shakeout, if you will, of the postseason, and I think a lot of people really like that, and the expanded playoffs. Are you for it or are you against it?
You know, I think what baseball has become, Jason, is good theater. And that's the way that MLB has basically designed the playoffs to be, to give people an opportunity or a reason to turn on that channel. And, hey, it's a loser go home game, another one tonight. And when you have that kind of excitement, short series and so on, I think that is you're able to capture attention. Now, you don't get as many days as all the extended series, but nonetheless, I think that Major League Baseball has done a good job creating theater, but not necessarily following your team down the stretch, so to say.
Are there any things that you would like to see carry over from the 2020 season? Again, Baseball Rules Academy, you're obviously big on the rules. Anything that you saw, whether it's the runner at second base to start extra innings, the designated hitter, of course, staying in the National League, anything that you've seen that you would like to see going forward, the pitch count, or I'm sorry, the number of batters that the pitcher has to face. I mean, are those kind of things that you would like to see implemented and stay in the game?
Well, some of them I thought worked pretty well. And we go back to the pace of the game and the interest of the fans in the game and how to keep the thing exciting for everybody, right? And one of the things I did like was the 7-inning doubleheaders. I thought that was a great. Now, if you can get fans in the stands, that'd be a great bang for your buck. If I'm bringing my family or taking some friends from somewhere else over to the ball game, that's the kind of day I'd like to have down at the ballpark. Because those games seem to go very quickly and they were interesting and so on. I think the 3-batter minimum rule, I didn't really see much effect. Some managers were complaining about that. I thought it was interesting to have it in the back of your mind, but it really didn't come into play all that often. Managers are pretty deft, and they figured out a way to get 3 pitchers in an inning anyway. In an interesting way, they were able to do that. The man on second base to start extra innings, I think if you start that, in the 11th inning, something like that, I think that's also during the regular season is something that you should do. Because what we've seen, it's weird. If you look at all these really long extra inning games, the middle innings, meaning like from inning number 12 to number 15 or so, the offense basically just goes to sleep. Mm-hmm. And you see how many 1, 2, 3 innings there are. So this is a way to get to an outcome of a ball game, which is what you should do. I didn't see – I would like to see whatever speed-up rules they could implement actually enforce. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that I would really like to see. And finally, I think, and this may be from my standpoint, being a former pitcher, one of the things that I am most dear to, which is a rule about balks. If you see now the modern day pitcher, he stands out there and he shimmies and shakes and jives and he's shaking his leg and his toes tapping and so on until he finally comes to a stop. And then he goes to the plate. Well, if you think that the stolen base is an exciting part of baseball, then you should not allow pitchers to balk like they're doing right now. Major League Baseball umpires have just not enforced the rule. Maybe they don't have the support of the league. I don't know the inside scoop there, except that there are a lot of pitchers pushing that envelope, and that's why you don't see a running game. Because who can get a jump off a guy that has balked 6 times before he goes to the plate? And I'm not the only one that sees it, but I sure do wish that they would address that, because that would put a little more excitement back in the game, put some speed out there. Guys like you could get back into the lineup, Jason.
I don't know about that, but you've definitely been very vocal on that. I've noticed on the broadcast in the short 60 game season. But you mentioned the runner at second to start the extra innings, and we experienced that here in Bowling Green with the Bowling Green Hot Rods, because they implemented that rule a couple of years ago in low A ball, Midwest League, the same league that the Dayton Dragons are in. And I think at first it took some getting used to, but we were covering a couple of games when the Dragons came to town to play the Hot Rods. And it adds a level of excitement that you didn't even think about, because you've got that chess match kind of going on between both managers. And I think that would be a great rule to kind of keep moving forward. And like you said, it gets rid of the humdrum of those 12 to 15 innings there where they're just kind of trying to go through the motions and nobody's really wanting to win the game.
I think the one other rule, we didn't touch on it because this is affecting National League teams right now as we speak, is there going to be a designated hitter? Because if you're a National League ball club, obviously you're putting your roster together completely differently than you are if you're in a National League and don't have the DH. So, yeah, that's another thing that's kind of holding up the off season a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. We spoke a little bit about minor league baseball, and of course this past week was kind of, I don't want to say a banner week for minor league baseball, but there was a contraction of about 40, 45 teams, getting minor league baseball down to about 119 teams, and it really changed the landscape of a lot of communities, really for better, for worse. I mean, you look at the Midwest League that I talked about here, again, with the Hot Rods and Dayton Dragons, they move up to high A ball as opposed to low A ball, but then you have other communities, much like the Lexington Legends, who are no longer affiliated with baseball. You've got teams like the Billings Mustangs, which are still kind of grouped with minor league baseball, but they're not necessarily with the Reds anymore, that have been around and one of the Reds' longest affiliates going back to the 70s, and even back in, they're a team from like around World War II. So I just kind of wanted your take, maybe a 30,000-foot Chris Welsh view of what happened last week with minor league baseball, in your opinion.
Well, in my opinion, and speaking from a small town viewpoint, Minor league baseball is a lot of times the fabric of what goes on in the summertime. It gives kids and families a place to go. Doesn't cost them a lot of money. It keeps the kids entertained. Chances are they bring home some kind of a souvenir or a giveaway, and they may even get an autograph. So they don't really care whether they're seeing the next Mike Trout or the next Jason Harbison. So it's one of those things where I think it really hurts a little slice of Americana. As far as minor league teams, what if you had just purchased a minor league team 3 years ago for, say, $3 million, and now you don't have any affiliation at all? I understand where MLB's coming from. What they're saying is that, you know what, take a look at big league rosters. All these rosters are filled with top drafted kids and high-rated international free agents. Every once in a while, you sprinkle in some guys that are diamonds in the rough, 20th round players, 15th round, Albert Pujols, that type of a deal. But it doesn't happen very often. And I think that that's what Major League Baseball is saying. So those guys that kind of sneak in the back door, like Mike Piazza is a bad example because he's a Hall of Famer. But the majority of those players, guys like me, 21st round pick, are mediocre because we've just reached that level. And I think that's what MLB is trying to say. They're just going to cut the fat. And unfortunately, small towns really hurt in the meantime. And
I think another thing that a lot of fans don't realize, I'm going to use Bowling Green as an example, is there's a lot of local tax dollars maybe around that. Like they've built the stadium. Our stadium is named after Bowling Green. It's not named after a local company like that. So we're essentially the taxpayers are essentially on the hook for many years to come. And there's a handful of ballparks that have that same problem. And it's going to be hard come, I don't want to get too political, but it's going to be hard come next election time to put that on the ballot saying, hey, we got this empty ballpark here. Or maybe it doesn't even have affiliated baseball. We got just, a bunch of high school kids playing here. I don't want to really be paying for this for another 5, 10, even 20 years.
Well, I think, unfortunately, there's probably some small towns that are really going to be in a bind because of this, even if Major League Baseball's come in to try to bail them out a little bit, which is, I think, what they've done or tried to do. But the bottom line is, when you lose your lifeblood, you're not going to keep staying in business. So it could be that a lot of these cities that you refer to are it's going to reshape the way you do things. Maybe there will be some more college leagues. Maybe this will spur a little bit more amateur baseball because you have greater places, nicer places to play. I don't know. It's a shame. It trickles down. It affects everybody. Every kid there, every person who had a part-time job at the minor league ballpark, may not have one here in 21. So it's a sad thing in my eyes because I'm kind of an old, I have an old view from things. I played in the minor leagues in the 1970s. So none of the ballparks that we played in back in those days would ever pass the litmus test, for what Major League Baseball requires of their minor league franchises, which is an expanded clubhouse, big trainer's room, weights. Are you kidding me? Our home clubhouse in West Haven, Connecticut, in AA was a mobile home. I don't even think it was a double wide, except for where the trainer was. And you talk about being on top of each other. You couldn't get that by Major League Baseball for one day nowadays. So, and we're getting guys called up from that place right to the New York Yankees. How about that for a little change?
Well,
anyway, I digress, Jason. So.
No, that's fine. I actually went to college in Columbus, so I know you were a former Columbus Clippers when they were with the Yankees. And old Cooper Stadium, even when I was going there, it's been many, many years ago, but it was. I don't even think it would pass for today. Now, granted, they've got a really nice ballpark there now in Columbus, but Cooper Stadium, where you play it, I don't think would even hold.
I got to tell you, though, that when we played there, we thought it was state of the art. I had AstroTurf. There were hardly any bad seams. They kept the infield that was dirt really nice. It was a state of the art place. And it wouldn't be an independent league ballpark right now. But, a lot of things change.
Yeah, I know this is the Chris Welsh interview, but I remember actually seeing Derek Jeter there play when he was coming up through the Yankees.
Wow.
And
That's pretty cool.
he had a hole in his glove the size of a barn door. And I went back and I looked up some of his stats the years that I was in college when I saw him. And he had so many errors. And I'm like, this kid's never going to make it. So just goes to show you, like you were saying, you never know some guy coming up to the minor leagues, what they're going to amount to if and when.
It's funny. It's funny that you bring that up, because really what that does is tells me that there's a conflict here in baseball. And, Derek Jeter was a high round draft pick. I think the Reds had a chance to pick him and they didn't. And it was the infamous Chad Mottola, as I remember, who was a great kid. But unfortunately for the Reds, he wasn't Derek Jeter. And it was just one of those things where if all you went by was analytics and defensive numbers and defensive WAR and all the other things that you can apply for, evaluate infielders on their defense, would we have seen Derek Jeter? I mean, or did somebody see an intangible there, maybe a little sense of leadership, maybe a guy that understood the game and understood his teammates, learn how to hit the ball the other way? I don't know. That's a question. And I think that's also one of the fundamental questions of facing baseball, is how you evaluate these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. We're speaking with Chris Welsh, of course, the broadcaster for the Cincinnati Reds, right here on the Redlegs Radio Report from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Now, Chris, I guess this doesn't necessarily have to be a baseball question, but how do you think that the landscape, and I'm thinking now about, you see just almost daily with college football, how games are just being canceled at the last minute. Literally, teams are in the locker room, and all of this kind of jockeying for position and all of these rule changes on the fly. Do you think this kind of goes, I guess, moving forward? Is this something that you can expect to see just in, whether it's baseball, any sport, just the landscape of being able to change and just kind of adapting to COVID-19?
Well, I think going forward with baseball that you're going to see players and managers and everybody in Tier 1 get vaccines. Baseball's got a lot of juice. I mean, it's a $10 billion industry, and the trickle-down effect throughout the economy is big. So I doubt very much that the federal government would allow baseball to be shut down. Those cable companies need games. They need their content every night, all season long. And if they can do that, then it makes for a better place. So I hopefully that's the way that's going to work out.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, look, this weekend, again, not to dwell on college football, but just some of the games that got canceled and some of the playoff games. You've got teams playing at the same time where there are league championship games. Of course, look no further than UC, just kind of the season they've had, games on again, off again, not being in the conversation really for the playoff spot. So I think just the landscape, you can take that into baseball as well, hockey, NBA, whatever you want to talk about of professional sports, and just see that it's just really upended the way we think about sports.
I think it's also the way we view sports because we're not viewing them live anymore. And if you're from if you're from Bowling Green, you haven't had it, you wouldn't be going up to, maybe you go up to UK and watch some games. Maybe you drive up to Louisville, who knows, or down in the Tennessee, what your favorite school, certainly, or right there, of course, with the Hilltoppers, I should say.
That's right, yeah.
But I don't know about you. I mean, I'm sitting back watching these basketball games, and I'm seeing these cutouts, and it's just not the same. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just not as much drama. And I think that's a challenge for baseball going forward, is how to create drama. Drama is not 15 strikeouts a game for each team. Or 20 strikeouts. I mean, whatever it may be. It's not a 2-1 ball game where you have 9 walks and 30 total strikeouts. So you have to put some action in the game. And I think that's, the Major League Baseball ought to be thinking about that.
Well, I know you would know better than anyone covering games there at Great American Ballpark with an empty stadium. And I was lucky enough, I think twice this past shortened season, to go up and cover a game. And you're right. I was telling somebody that it was almost apocalyptic walking up to, first off, I could park right next to underneath the stadium and just walk right into the stadium, which was crazy to me. I've never even had that experience ever in my life. And just no fans, of course, and just hearing foul balls hit the plastic seats and actually hearing the guys from the opposing dugout. You could hear them up in the new press box there at Great American Ballpark, and it was just, I don't want to say it was really eerie, but I mean, I'm sure it was for you as well. But just it was such a huge factor in a game that I don't want to say we took for granted, but it was just so different.
I think it took the players a little bit to get used to. I think it took the managers a little bit to get used to how it affects their players. I think it's very difficult to evaluate last year in context of, did a manager manage well? Did a player have a good season? Did he pitch well? You know, what can we expect in 2021? The projections now, based on a 60-game schedule of what a guy did last year, project him to this year, very difficult to do. I think you really got to go back to basics.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Chris, give us tell us a little more about the Baseball Rules Academy. Of course, you talk about it every once in a while on the broadcast, but I'm really interested. I was kind of hunting around on it this past week, knowing that you were going to come on there, and I hadn't been on in a while, but I really enjoy some of the videos that you put on there. Not necessarily, of course, the rules that go along with that, but you've got like a broadcaster's rule challenge. You had almost like a game show that was going on with some of the Reds broadcasters and other people. I mean, it was really cool. I really enjoyed that.
Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. BaseballRulesAcademy.com. I've been doing that about 6 or 7 years now, where I needed to know the rules as a broadcaster, and I thought I did as a former player. So the first time something quirky happens on the field, I look down and I have no idea what the rule is going to be. So I come back from a 90-second break, and I have to tell everybody, I'm sorry, folks, I don't know the rule here. I don't know if it's obstruction or interference or, I didn't know any of the nuances. And I decided to put together a database and connect that database to like phrases, like common phrases like batter hit by ball or runner hit by ball, while standing on the base, that kind of thing. Just create a database so it would take me to the right rule. And so that kind of took off from there. And then I said, well, maybe I'll add some other rules. So I've added NCAA, I've added NFHS, which is high school, added Little League rules out there. It's a great haven for anybody who just wants to check up on the umpire, or look up a rule at any level. And we've got hundreds of videos, teaching videos. We've got courses there. We have with workshops and lessons. We're going to have a full-fledged online NFHS, which is high school, umpire course online for associations, so that and I've got guest speakers coming in to do the lectures. Big time. I'll have to get you on there, man. Get you all set with the rules.
Well, I would say you probably would have run out of guests, or you probably called your entire Rolodex. How old is that reference that I just said Rolodex? But you know what I mean? You could all of the people in your phone, and if I was at the bottom, probably right near Joe Zerhus and alphabetically, maybe that's
I might have to check my spam folder for your stuff. Sorry.
That's so true. Now, speaking of broadcasting, we've talked about this on the show before too, but I would imagine your daughter has a podcast. It's called something like This Podcast Will Kill You. I would imagine right now, with everything that's going on with COVID, she's probably getting thousands and thousands of hits going on right now.
Yeah, the thing's blowing up. And it was actually very interesting before COVID. It's called This Podcast Will Kill You. And there's a website of the same name. And she started with her friend Erin. My daughter's name is Erin. So it's Erin and Erin, both PhDs, and both in different parts of like microbiology. And my daughter Erin got involved in all that when she was in college. She studied one of her first biology classes. She studied the Black Plague. And so she thought, the Black Death bubonic plague. And so anyway, they came up with an idea for this podcast where they would discuss a certain disease, and of course, something like smallpox and polio and things like this, how it affects you and so on, rabies. But of course, this year they've been pretty much inundated with the COVID-19. They just come out next week. It'll be on Tuesday. They'll have a first of a 3-part series about the vaccines and how the vaccines work, and why you should get a vaccine or why you shouldn't get a vaccine. And each podcast is about an hour long, and it's very interesting. And the other thing, Jason, of course, maybe she learned this from me, is that they feature a cocktail, either alcoholic or non-alcoholic, at the beginning of each podcast, and they call it the Quarantini. So you have to log on and find out at least what a Quarantini is all about.
Is that kind of straight from like Kathy Lee Gifford, where she and was it Hoda? They always have that little, they're drinking on Good Morning America or whatever that show. Is that kind of homage to that, I guess?
You got to kill those germs.
I guess so. Now, Chris, before we went on the air, of course, you know, the last portion of every interview, we always kind of turn it goofball real quick. So this is no different. But before we went on air, we were talking a little bit about my background here. And if you notice that in my kind of baseball collection here, and you know, as a broadcaster, there's rare people are always like, oh man, I bet you have all the best stuff. And it's like, well, yes and no, because we can't really ask Johnny Bench for an autograph if he's there at Great American Ballpark. If you're covering for the Reds as part of the media, you can't get autographs or anything like that. So this is missing one ball. And I was going to kind of show this to you, but for our listeners here, this is going to be on the radio later, but it said, Reds Radio Report, you're fired. And then it's got Chris Welsh's autograph on it. And this is one of my prized possessions, even though it is on the bottom row. It is one of my prized possessions because we were doing the show for the Reds Caravan. You've been to Bowling Green many times on that. And we don't normally get a lot of autographs. That's really the only time that we can, as broadcasters, get anything and not get our hand slapped by Rob Butcher or tear our credential badge off of us. And yeah.
You remind me of a guy that the Reds had as an employee for probably 50 or 60 years, Chief Bender.
Yeah.
And Chief Bender was the head of the minor leagues. And he had been around, and he was about 75 to 80 years old. God love him, and he was a wonderful guy. And Marge came in one day and got mad at a bunch of people, and she fired him. And he kept coming to work. So no one said anything. He just went back to his desk, and he would just sit there and do his work all day. And a week later, he said, hey, we thought we fired you. And he kept coming back to work, and finally Marge hired him back again. So, you know, I tried to fire you, but there you are. Keep coming to work.
I think it's a Seinfeld episode or something where George Costanza actually said he quit, but then he came back and then they didn't really even notice it. And I think it's based on like Larry David, the guy that does Curb Your Enthusiasm. He actually did that on Saturday Night Live. So Chief Bender did that in actual life as well.
He did in real life. That's probably where Larry David stole that gig. So maybe there ought to be some compensation going back and forth.
I do have one more thing to share. Again, I know this is a visual medium, but I do have this card as well. I know there's kind of a little bit of a glare here, but a Chris Welsh, and it's in plastic here, signed 1986 Topps Reds card here. Now, what some people don't realize is you didn't have your mustache then, and a lot of younger fans like my daughter wouldn't have realized that you couldn't have facial hair with the Reds for the longest time, even up to, I believe, around 1999 when Greg Vaughn joined the team and they kind of relaxed that rule to sign him. I may be wrong with some of those dates, but it was a really, really long time that the Reds never allowed facial hair.
You know, I shaved my mustache for the Reds not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. The first one going back to 1976, maybe 75, when I was invited up from where I was at college, University of South Florida, to come up and throw batting practice to the Reds by Chief Bender, who we just talked about. And I got up there as nervous as can be, and I was getting ready to go on a field in a Reds uniform, and I'm pinching myself. I'm a sophomore in college, and I can't believe it. And one of the coaches comes over and says, you can't go out there with that mustache. I said, show me the razor. So I shaved my mustache right there in the clubhouse at the sink. Full uniform. Second time, of course, I came back and played with the Reds in 1986, played for Pete Rose. And I'd always had a mustache prior to that, but I was looking for a big league job, and I made the ball club. I had to shave my mustache off. And the last time was when I was hired as an announcer back in 1993. And Jim Bowden was the GM. And he was kind of a boy wonder at that time. And he was kind of pushing his authority. And he told me supposedly the whole story of how I got hired. And then he also said, Marge wants you to shave that mustache. I said, no, I'm not shaving that mustache. So I went back and talked it over with my wife and everything. We weren't really sure whether he was bluffing or not. And I think he was bluffing. Anyway, I shaved it. And that's 3 times I've shaved.
I love hearing old stories like that. You're always bringing something to the table every time. I'll tell you, I'm always doing research on you to see if there's something that I haven't found out about you. Last time we talked about all of your sisters, because I didn't realize you're the only male. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am. As far as the stories, that's the one thing about baseball and having been traveled around a lot. I was up and down from the minor leagues, played winter ball a few years, have broadcasted, with all different broadcast partners and so on. And it gives you a way to kind of connect a city with a year, and it makes it a lot easier to remember these stories. And of course, thanks for, the guys like you who have me on the air. I get a chance to repeat these stories every once in a while, so I kind of keep them fresh as I can.
Well, we're gonna give you, I think, how Johnny Carson used to always give like jackets to his regular guests.
Wait a minute, are you gonna give me a hat? Let's see.
Yeah, there you go. I was gonna say that we'd give you one of those blazers or something, but you have all these hats, and I guess we'll go ahead and say this, but you were so kind and gracious. We talked off air that you're sending to the station for our Hats for Tim campaign that's been going for a long time, and we really, really appreciate that, and can't thank you enough for keeping that going. Of course, this past very nice. This past year we had we didn't get as many donations because our show wasn't on as long. Ooh, that's going to be a nice one. The people will
I'm gonna divide some families now.
People are going to be fighting. People will be fighting over that one.
Wait a minute. Okay, I got to give equal time right now, but I don't have a Hilltopper hat. So maybe if I send you 20 hats, you can send me one in return.
There we go. We will work out an exchange. We thank you so much for that donation, and we're firing back up the juices on hats for Tim, of course, because of our late great co-host Tim McKinney. And it's hard to believe. I know you'll find this hard to believe too, Chris, that he's been gone 5.5 years now. So.
It is hard to believe. I was thinking about that the other day, and I saw these hats, and I was cleaning out, and I really wanted to give them to people that would be, who like it. And could use them. And I know that you guys have that great charity working where you donate the hats to kids up in Louisville, to cancer hospitals up there, and it's great work. And so I needed to get a hold of you, and I can't believe when I thought about it. Gosh, has it been that long that he has been gone? He was such a big part of your life, such a big part of the Reds Radio Report and the whole fabric of media down in your area. And man, it's you just got to move on and be thankful for the time that you spent with a guy like that.
Yeah, I know Tim will be smiling down on moments like this. So, I mean, his impact. I always believe that your impact when you're long after you're gone, it just kind of tells you about the true man that someone is or woman. But I think this is a fine example, and it goes well beyond just hat donations that we get every year as well as gift cards. But it just goes to show you the outreach that he had in this community and really the Reds Nation. Jamie Ramsey and a lot of the guys in the PR staff, when he passed away, they had just put in the second scoreboard out in right field, and both scoreboards had a tribute to Tim McKinney, and that's actually the background of our Facebook page for Redlegs Radio Report. So that was one of the greatest moments, and they actually were putting that up during his viewing, and I sent that over to his now widow. And they pretty much stopped what they were doing and had to sit down because that was such a big moment for them.
Well, I'm glad we got to talk about him a little bit then.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, thanks so much for coming on. This has been great. And this is, in lieu of Reds Fest this year, since we didn't get to see one another. So I guess this is the wave of the future, doing things via Zoom.
Yeah, if I had really planned this out, Jason, I probably would have taken my microphone out and done the Zoom mic drop because that was still one of the more fun moments I've ever had, really, is broadcasting. Yeah, you guys do a great job on that show. You have great guests, and you reject a lot of great guys, too, like me from time to time. But we have a good time doing that, and I can't wait. Anytime you need to contact me, let me know. I don't know whether, why don't you get me back on your show sometime as we get closer to spring training, which I hear might be pushed back a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I'll give you a size up of what this ball club did over the winter and maybe where they're headed from here.
That would be great. I'm looking forward to that. Thanks so much for coming on, sir, and have a happy holidays as always.
All right, my man. Look for these hats. We'll see you later.
Will do.